CeeDee Lamb, yeah. But that was supposed to be a great segue after the 88 thing. But
was it really? Was that really supposed to be a great segue?
Yeah, it was the best we could do.
Just here's what you can do. Watch when it's on NBC on Sunday, right?
It's also on Peacock.
And on Peacock.
Yes.
At what time?
3 p.m. Eastern.
3 p.m. Eastern. Watch it. Root for it. Bet on it at DraftKings and use promo code Barry. If you're not into NASCAR, bet on it. There you go. And then you'll be suddenly into it. It's actually great. If you've never been to a race, it's actually awesome.
Yep.
I've been to a number of NASCAR races. It's actually great.
So we kick it off with CeeDee Lamb on the love list. He comes in as a top 5 wide receiver for you this week. Barry, CeeDee Lamb, obviously that Dallas passing attack decimated the Rams last week.
He's as fast as a race car. We just saw it. I believe that's what all that was about. Look, my guy Aites has a 33% target share over the last 2 weeks. Finally, Dak Prescott realizing what we've known for a long time. He's the best guy on your team. Try to get it to him. And you like this matchup with the Eagles. Philadelphia's allowed the second most touchdowns to wide receivers, and they've allowed at least 17 fantasy points to a wide receiver in every game they've played. So if you tell me, hey, there's a wide receiver that's going to get at least 17 fantasy points in this game, I'm telling you it's going to be CeeDee Lamb. My guy Aites, he's wide receiver 5 for me this week, as you see it there on your screen. Give me a big game. 8.
I like it. You know, the best I've ever seen Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb both play football in the same game was against the Eagles last season towards the end of the day. Completely lit them up. They moved CeeDee around the formation. They put him in the slot. He's running deep routes from the slot, and the Eagles had no answer for him whatsoever. It seems like the Cowboys now have realized that they just cannot run the ball for whatever reason. They are throwing it more. Dak has been excellent the past 2 weeks. They'll have to throw against Philadelphia. Should be a big game for Aites.
Yeah. Jay, how about Garrett Wilson on the love list this week? A Zach Wilson-led offense, but 2 things here. 1, he's starting to pepper Garrett Wilson with targets, even in the rain against the Giants. And the Chargers' pass defense is a very vulnerable opponent, no matter who is at quarterback.
Yeah, look, I think with Zach Wilson, we're at the point now where it's from a real football perspective, it's just not happening. But he has shown at least that he can throw the ball to Garrett Wilson a little bit more than at the start of the season when it was a total disaster. I think they're going to be down in this game. They are underdogs at home to the Chargers. I just think to be able to keep up with Justin Herbert. Also, the Chargers have an excellent run defense out of nowhere. So I don't think the Jets will be able to run the ball, stack boxes. Garrett Wilson should get a lot of work.
40% target share in back-to-back games. It's a good matchup against the Chargers. Chargers not only will game script work in their way, but to your point, Chargers allow the most yards per game to opposing wide receivers. Wide receivers that have gotten at least 6 targets against the Bolts so far this year, averaging 18.7 fantasy points per game. We expect at least 6 targets for Garrett Wilson in this one. He comes in at wide receiver 10 for me, Connor. There you go.
That's pretty good.
You buy that?
Wow. I do buy that.
All right, there you go.
There's nobody else on the field that can catch the ball in their offense.
You're Mr. Jets.
Does it matter that Zach Wilson is going up against a bad pass defense? Because I feel like Zach Wilson's play is just entirely in his own head.
That's correct. It doesn't matter.
They play down to
but
bad.
it certainly, but you prefer him going against a bad defense than a good one.
I guess.
Yeah. It matters that he'll have to throw.
Yeah.
As you said.
That's
what matters. Like he had to against Kansas City as well. So next up on the list here, T. Higgins. He's got the Bills. T. Higgins comes in as a top 20 wide receiver for you this week. Barry's averaging 8.5 targets in his 4 full games. I think that's a big key is that health is on his side.
Yeah,
now.
That's a 23% target share. And to your point, he is finally healthy. So now he gets against Buffalo, a game that'll be on Sunday night after the race. Tune into Sunday Night Football on NBC and Peacock.
You have to change the channel.
Bills and Bengals. Yeah, exactly. You're lazy. Now you don't have to get up and change the channel.
You don't have to change the Peacock.
Sit there on your couch. Right. Look, here's the thing. Since Tre'Davious White has gone down, the Bills allow the 5th highest catch rate to wide receivers. They've enlisted at least 1 touchdown to a wide receiver in 3 out of 4 games. 3 of the 4 games in that stretch. And so obviously Jamar Chase is going to get his, but this is a game that has a very high over-under. We expect a lot of points to be scored on both sides of the ball. And so T. Higgins, who's getting a lot of work, Joe Burrow fully healthy, he's fully healthy. Good matchup. Jamar Chase is a top 3 play this week, but T. Higgins inside my top 20. He makes the love list.
All right. Moving over to Dalton Kincaid here, Jay. Kincaid over the last 2 weeks, over 16 points per game in the tight end landscape of fantasy. That's phenomenal. And the most important thing is he's a real part of this offense now. Dawson Knox is out, and it's all Kincaid at the tight end position for Buffalo.
Yep, a lot of 11 personnel from the Bills lately, and Kincaid just seems to have more space to operate with Dawson Knox not there. He had those 15 targets. He was really a focal point against the Bucs. And also this Bengals defense, like a lot of the focus is going to be how on the Bills defense isn't what it was. This Bengals defense hasn't been amazing. They're ranked 17th in the NFL in EPA per play. And quietly, yes, the Niners didn't score heavily against the Bengals and Purdy threw those 2 picks, but outside of those 2 picks, like Purdy moved the ball through the air against the Bengals. I don't think this is an amazing defense, so I think that the Bills will have success through the air and Kincaid will benefit.
Specifically about the Bengals defense, Jay, Cincinnati is bottom 3 in terms of most receiving yards and touchdowns allowed to opposing tight ends. Tight ends who have seen at least 5 targets against the Bengals this year are averaging over 14 fantasy points per game. Talented guy. I'm a tight end 4 this week.
Wow.
Like that, yeah.
You had a tight end
Barkley
6
2,
last week.
Kincaid
Yeah,
4.
and that paid off. What?
Right.
Barkley 2, Kincaid 4.
Yeah.
Really kind of guys moving up the rankings.
They are indeed.
Okay.
They are indeed. Much like you, not having seen Talladega Nights, are moving down my rankings.
Yes.
You know how we on Sunday on the Fantasy Football pregame show, a viewer
you
asked me
ranked
to
your
rank
co-hosts?
everyone?
Yeah, he ranked us.
Yeah,
on the
exactly.
flash
Somebody tweeted at me about
So
this.
is right. Connor's my favorite.
drive.
right?
This is the next
Heard I
year.
was left out
Dr.
on the
Ahmed
show.
is second. You're third.
Yeah.
Lawrence,
I gotta say,
Lawrence I
Connor,
gotta mention.
when I sat in the host chair on Monday when you're out there losing Emmys, I guess it's a lot more jarring being that closer to Matthew. I like this kind of little.
You weren't even there. You weren't there on popcorn
It's
day.
a different show.
That's
it's a different
true.
show
It
from
is.
here.
That
No,
was
no,
good
I right.
advice. He should have listened to your advice.
I tried to
That
help
was-
you.
Yeah.
I was literally walking to the Emmys and tweeting that to you, and I could have got hit by a cab. Anything could have happened, but I needed to get that advice
Yes.
to you.
Exactly. Especially because you weren't winning. So it
No,
didn't matter
I had to make the use of
whether
the day
you showed
somehow.
up to the Emmys or not. It's not like you had to go up and accept it.
There was a reception beforehand. That didn't matter.
Okay,
Yes.
sure.
Yeah, so my 12 to 1 hour, instead of sitting here, I just ate hors d'oeuvres and got to
Right,
have
you just
drinks.
and just
yeah.
and
sounds
it-
great.
was it stuff like hey, where do you think you'll put it, Todd Zeal?
Why
And
is
like
he
right.
Oh, hey.
Hey, at the Emmys.
Top the zeal.
hey, no, hey, it's me, Connor Rogers.
God.
Ah,
How about
I'm
some
about
other-
to lose an Emmy.
How about some others receiving votes here? Deontay Johnson comes in as wide receiver 20. Amari Cooper right behind him at wide receiver 21. Nico Collins at wide receiver 24. Pop Douglas against the Commanders, wide receiver 36, with Kendrick Bourne out for the season. Jake Ferguson, tight end 6. Trey McBride. Yes, it's Clayton Tune under center, but Trey McBride, monster week last week since Zach Ertz.
Well,
went
we've talked about it a lot. The Cardinals are second in the NFL in terms of tight end target share, so I think he should get a lot of work in this one, especially as Myles Garrett and everyone is bearing down on Clayton Tune. He's going to look to quickly get rid of the ball to Trey McBride. Jake Ferguson, look, start your tight ends against the Eagles. Philadelphia allowing the second most touchdowns to opposing tight ends. I want to point out Demario Douglas here. 22% target share over the past 2 weeks. Kendrick Bourne out for the season. Devontae Parker currently in concussion protocol. They play my Commanders, who have a bad defense to begin with, and then just traded Montez Sweat and Chase Young. So a bad defense got worse. I think that was the right move for the Commanders. Look to the future. I think it was unlikely that Sweat or Young were back. It's sad because the draft capital that was used on both those guys, it's just sort of, again, it's just another example of just mismanagement by the team for years and years and years. But I thought that was actually a really good move for the Commanders to get something. I can't believe the Bears gave up a 2 for Montez Sweat, which is likely going to be like a top 5 pick
like
in the second.
34,
Right,
yeah.
exactly. So I love the move for the Commanders for the future. But what it means for us now is that a bad defense got worse, and Demario Douglas is somebody I know they're very high on in New England. So those guys there, we'll talk about Deontay Johnson more in the next segment there. But yeah, Amari Cooper, I don't care who's playing quarterback. He's going to get a massive target share against Arizona. And Nico Collins, very quietly, last 4 weeks, Buccaneers, averaging 209 yards per game to wide receivers. That is most in the NFL.
Moving over to the hate list here, led by
They also can't run the ball, so they're going to have to throw. Nico and Tank Dell.
Hate list led by Zay Flowers against Seattle. He'll have to see the combination of Tariq Woolen and, of course, Devin Witherspoon, Jay. And it's, for Zay Flowers, it's been kind of trending downward in recent weeks.
Just isn't happening. When I think of Zay Flowers on the football field, I think of Lamar Jackson throwing him a screen pass. I think it tackled for a 3-yard
pretty
gain.
much it.
It just doesn't seem like they've been able to activate him in the ways they would have liked. Now he goes up against a really good, underrated defense in Seattle. So I think Zay Flowers is at the point. Just how much that team runs the ball with how Andrews looks and Odell as well as getting targets. I think we just have to see it more from Zay before we really believe in it.
To your point about watching them play, last 3 games, Flowers has an average depth of 6.4 yards. To your point about it's just like these bubble screens and that aren't really going anywhere as well. One wide receiver. Since week 4, one wide receiver scored over 15 fantasy points against the Seahawks. Again, I agree with you on that defense. He's wide receiver 30 for me this week. The guy he, in theory, replaced Marquise Hollywood Brown, now on the Arizona Cardinals, he also makes the hate list, Connor, real quickly.
Yeah.
Rookie quarterback on the road against Cleveland's number 1 ranked defense. He's had one game this year with more than 61 yards. He was really not involved last week. He bailed you out with a last-second touchdown in comeback mode. But I don't know. Brown's allowed the lowest catch rate to wide receivers and the fewest fantasy points per game. Third fewest fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. Hollywood Brown outside my top 30 this week as well.
Christian Watson comes in as wide receiver 38 for Barry J. And the fact is, since Christian Watson's been back, I mean, he's not even getting 10 points a game right now. He's outside the top 50 receivers in fantasy.
I don't think there's any player on the Packers I want to start. Like at any position, any wide receiver, tight end, running back, quarterback, no Packers wide receiver I want to start. Even when they're
honestly, not even their kicker's good.
Yeah.
He's missed a couple of kicks.
Yeah, Rashawn Gary, if you start a defensive player, maybe
IDP.
him. But outside of that,
I
don't want any part of the Packers offense.
And finally, Josh Palmer here, Barry. He's got the Jets secondary. Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed, they made their return against the Giants last week. Palmer comes in as wide receiver 43.
That's exactly right. So it's a tough matchup. No team in the NFL has allowed fewer fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers than your New York Fighting Jets, Connor. And here's the other thing. The Jets have yet to allow 45 receiving yards to multiple wide receivers in the same game this year. So if you sort of figure like, okay, Keenan Allen's probably getting to 45 yards this game, like what are the odds that anyone else does? I think it's unlikely. Josh Palmer is my wide receiver 43, especially because Quentin Johnson's starting to get a little bit more involved in this offense too. Yeah, not somebody I want to use this week. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched. Or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.